Hello everyone, and welcome to my YNR Update 24 channel. I hope you're having a great day. Don't forget to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up before we dive into today's Young and the Restless update. Irritated, Victoria turns down Billy's offered event. He asks, "You don't trust me?" Victoria thinks he's trying to interview her, but he insists he's just concerned about her. He knows she's trying to save her company. Victoria admits Newman is under attack. Kane's software is tearing them up from the inside. Victoria Billy YNR Billy admits the Abbotts were terrified about it being unleashed on Jabot. She congratulates him snarkily for dodging the bullet. Billy asks how bad it is, but she can't let her guard down with him. Victoria says they'll figure this out. They have no choice. Victoria asks Billy about Abbott Communications. He says Sally's doing fantastic. Victoria worries he'll get bored not steering the ship. This irritates him. Victoria knows Sally has concerns. "You don't want Chancellor back, do you?" Victoria YNR Billy muses that Kane could end up with it. Victoria denies that will happen. She hopes her ex won't put everything with Sally at risk. Billy insists his Chancellor obsession is over, but Victoria is unconvinced. Nikki loves Chelsea at the ranch. Nikki waits on Chelsea, who is doing damage control. Adam's gone to check on Connor and Johnny. Chelsea assures her mother-in-law that she'll do what she can to protect Newman Enterprises, but warns it's only a matter of time. Nikki laments Catherine's legacy slipping away under her watch. She'll fight like hell to keep it. Chelsea assures her they can rebuild. Suddenly, Nikki diverts to a lengthy gushing praise of Chelsea, who recaps that she and Adam have worked hard to change. Nikki also probes about a remarriage, but Chelsea is happy with the way things are right now. Chelsea Nikki YNR Adam returns and Nikki steps out. Chelsea and Adam canoodle as he urges her to rest. She tells him about Nikki's compliments. Adam admits she was worried she would leave him over Victor's plan to go after Jabot. Chelsea's still against that, but she couldn't leave him. Chelsea Adam YNR dealing with Matt at Sharon's place. They all watch Nick limp around angrily on his crutch. He hollers at everyone to stop trying to manage him. Victor points out he's in no condition to fight a grown man. Nick agrees to let his dad have him, but he wants 5 minutes alone with him first. Nick YNR Sharon argues against Nick being alone with Matt, but he follows his dad out the door nonetheless. Sienna points out that a lot can happen in 5 minutes. She explains she went to Victor so that Noah or Nick wouldn't cross a line. They hope Victor will hand Clark over to the police. Outside, Matt's gag is removed as he's pulled from the trunk. Nick tells him he's already been found guilty. He snarks, "Oh yeah, who's the judge?" Victor steps out with a self-satisfied grin and says, "That would be me." Matt Clark YNR after dragging Matt inside, Victor tells him to take a good look at Noah, Sienna, and Sharon. It's the last time he'll see these people. They take turns having their say, with Noah going first, needling that Matt's lost his wife to a Newman. Sienna isn't sorry she'll never have to see him again. When it's Sharon's turn, she tells Matt he tried to break her, but failed. She goes over their history and informs Matt he's a miserable failure as a man. Nick interjects to suggest Matt take some deep breaths. If it's up to him, they'll be the last ones he ever takes. Nick YNR Matt snarks about their long, self-involved speeches and asks Nick to cut to it. "Do you plan to kill me?" Nick lunges and Victor barks at his men to take Matt to the main house. Name-calling ensues as he's dragged out. Victor thanks Sienna for coming to him and asks Sharon to see that Nick goes back to the hospital. Nick hopes this is over. Outside, Victor pauses to consider his next move. Victor outside YNR inside. Sharon starts in on Nick about going back to the hospital, but he alludes to problems at Newman. She says someone else can cover it, and he bites her head off. He then barks at Sienna. He doesn't appreciate her getting involved in his plans for Matt. "This is not your family." Noah yells at his dad, but Nick won't back down. Sharon intervenes, insisting that Nick spend the night. Nick angrily agrees. He heads out for some air. Noah apologizes to Sienna, who says his dad was right, she doesn't belong there. Outside, Nick chucks his crutch and grips his leg in agony. The final scenes at Crimson Lights. Victoria asks Billy if he'll rip Newman apart using Abbott Communications and her as an unnamed source. Billy points out that they've never hesitated to go after him, and she never stands up to her father. Victoria denies this. She cares about him. Billy cares about her too, but it won't stop her from going after what he wants. Billy, Victoria, Wyatt are at the ranch. Chelsea and Adam are still canoodling. He asks what else she and Nikki talked about. She teases that his family wants her to stick around. Adam assures her they'll get through this, but they need to confront Kane and Phyllis. Chelsea agrees. She's not afraid to take down either one of them. At Sharon's place, Sienna and Noah bicker about his family not being too fond of her. Sharon appears and Noah tells her Nick's still outside. On the porch, Nick agonizes and seems surprised when he reaches into his pocket and finds a baggie of fentanyl pills. Nick pills and wine are in his workout space. Victor warms up on the heavy bag. Finishing up, he wipes his face and flashes to hitting the punching bag with Nick the first time they dealt with Matt Clark in high school. He recalls telling his son to only hit in self-defense. Nick Victor flashback Weinar opening a door. Victor tells Matt Clark, sitting on the floor, to get up. They stand nose to nose. The humid summer air of Port Charles clung to the city like a second skin, thick with the scent of brine from the harbor, overheated asphalt, and the faint, ever-present hint of industrial decay. It was the kind of night that made formal clothes feel like a prison and tempers flare like struck matches. In the opulent, sterile penthouse of Victor Cassadine, the climate was artificially chilled, but the atmosphere was no less oppressive. Here, under the glare of crystal chandeliers, a transaction was taking place that had little to do with money, and everything to do with the currency of power, legacy, and desperation. Victor, patriarch of the Cassadine dynasty, stood before a floor-to-ceiling window, a silhouette against the glittering grid of the city below. He wasn't merely observing his domain, he was performing possession. His audience was Matt Clark, a gifted but perpetually luckless neurosurgeon whose career was a graveyard of near misses and sabotaged opportunities, most recently by the machinations of the very family Victor represented. Matt stood in the center of the room, shoulders hunched, looking profoundly out of place amidst the cold marble and abstract art. A man of your skill, Dr. Clark, should not be languishing in emergency rooms, patching up bar brawlers and victims of petty crimes. Victor began, his voice a low, cultured rumble that seemed to vibrate in the chilled air. He turned, his ice-blue eyes pinning Matt where he stood. Your potential is being squandered by a system that rewards connections over competence, and by the petty vengeances of my family. Matt's jaw tightened. He knew Victor was referring to the fallout with the Jeromes, to the way his life had been systematically dismantled. I manage, he muttered, a defiance that sounded weak even to his own ears. Manage, Victor repeated, letting the word hang with contempt. A verb for survivors, not for victors. I am offering you a transition from one to the other. He gestured to a sleek tablet on a side table. On it was a schematic for a state-of-the-art private neurosurgical suite, along with a proposed research grant of staggering size. This would be yours. Autonomy. Funding. A legacy of medical breakthroughs, not of sutures and shift work. No hospital board to answer to. No one to undermine you. The offer was a siren song. Matt felt the allure of it, the pure, uncorrupted practice of medicine, the chance to do real good, to be celebrated for his mind rather than punished for his associations. And the price? Matt asked, the question tasting of ash. Allegiance, Victor said simply, moving closer. Not to a cause, but to a vision. My vision. Port Charles is a fractured, sick organism. It needs direction. A steady hand. Your skills would be part of its rehabilitation. You would have my unwavering protection and resources. In return, your work, your prestige, becomes part of the Cassadine legacy. We rebuild the city's body, and in doing so secure its soul. This was no simple job offer. It was a feudal oath. Victor wasn't buying a surgeon. He was annexing a talent, assimilating Matt's future achievements into the Cassadine narrative. He spoke of healing, but the subtext was one of control. By giving Matt everything he ever wanted, Victor was ensuring Matt would never be able to walk away. The grant, the facility, the prestige, they would all be stamped with the Cassadine seal. Matt's independence would be the first casualty. He stood silent, the weight of the choice crushing him. Remain a free but broken man, or become a healed and powerful slave. The chilling perfection of the penthouse, a gilded cage by design, seemed to close in around him as Victor awaited his answer. Across town, in the perpetually shadowed alley behind the haunted Star, the air was a soup of different stenches, rotting garbage, urine, and the cloying sweetness of cheap air freshener drifting from a nearby vent. Here, the transactions were brutally direct, stripped of all pretense. Nick Cassadine, Victor's nephew, was a study in coiled tension. The elegant lines of his face were drawn tight, his eyes scanning the darkness with a jittery paranoia that was new to him. The polished air was gone, replaced by a raw nerve. His contact, a wraith-like figure named Milo, materialized from behind a dumpster. The exchange was wordless, a folded bill for a small, crumpled cellophane packet. Nick's hands, usually so steady, fumbled slightly. The packet disappeared into his inner jacket pocket, but its presence was a burning brand against his chest. "You're moving up in the world, Cassadine. This is the good stuff. Here. Don't do it all at once," Milo hissed, his voice raspy. Nick didn't respond. He just turned and walked quickly back toward the dim glow of the street lamp, his heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. This wasn't about recreation, not anymore. It was about silence. The pressures of his name, the ghost of his father's Stavros, the looming, manipulative shadow of his uncle Victor, the expectations he could never meet, they formed a cacophony in his mind. The cocaine was the mute button. It didn't bring happiness or even pleasure. It brought a sharp, crystalline quiet. It turned the swirling chaos of his legacy into a single, focused point. The next line, the next moment of numb stillness. He slipped into the driver's seat of his expensive, inconspicuous car, but didn't start the engine. In the rearview mirror, his own eyes stared back, haunted. He was trying to outrun a gilded inheritance, using a poison that would only chain him tighter to the darkness he sought to escape. The purchase in his pocket was more than a drug. It was a vote of no confidence in his own strength, a private surrender in a very public war. He was not building a legacy like Victor, or even salvaging one like Matt. He was anesthetizing his own. Meanwhile, in a quiet book-lined study that smelled of old paper and fine whiskey, a different kind of extraction was underway. Billy Abbott, a journalist with a face that had lost its boyish charm and gained the weary lines of a man who'd seen too many lies, sat across from Victoria Cassadine. She was Victor's daughter, the Empire's heiress apparent, a woman who wore her authority as effortlessly as her tailored silk blouse. Billy's approach was not one of feudal domination or chemical escape, but of careful, conversational dissection. He sipped his whiskey, playing the part of the old friend catching up, his posture relaxed, his smile easy. "The city's buzzing, Vicky. Your father's new Port Charles Renaissance project. Ambitious doesn't begin to cover it. Medical wings, tech incubators. It's almost philanthropic." He let the word hang, subtly questioning. Victoria's smile was polished, a corporate shield. "My father believes in giving back. In creating lasting structures." "Structures are key," Billy agreed, nodding amiably. "I was looking at the preliminary board for the medical initiative. Interesting mix. A lot of familiar Cassadine allies. Not a lot of independent voices." He took another casual sip. "Heard a rumor he's even poaching top surgical talent. Someone like Matt Clark." "That true?" Victoria's eyes flickered, a barely perceptible tell. "The fortress had a tiny crack. My father engages with the best minds available. Dr. Clark's work is remarkable." "Remarkable and recently very unlucky," Billy pressed, his tone light, as if discussing the weather. Almost as if someone wanted him available for a new opportunity. A forced opportunity. He leaned forward slightly, his demeanor shifting from friend to gentle inquisitor. "Vicky, come on. This isn't just charity. This is consolidation. He's not just building hospitals, he's building dependencies. He's gathering up everyone who's been knocked down by the chaos his family helped create, and offering them a hand up, with a Cassadine ring on it." He was weaving a narrative, using scraps of truth, rumor, and psychological insight to reconstruct Victor's plan. He wasn't accusing. He was connecting, presenting the picture for her to confirm or deny. He probed about cash flows through shell companies, about meetings with zoning officials, about the sudden silence of certain critics. Each question was a delicate tap on the wall of her composure, listening for a hollow spot. Victoria's defenses were formidable, but Billy was a master of the quiet, persistent probe. He wasn't seeking a signed confession. He was gathering fragments of truth, watching her micro-expressions, noting what she deflected and what she flatly denied. By the end of their conversation, he had no smoking gun, but he had a map. A map of where the bodies, metaphorical and otherwise, might be buried. His possession was intellectual, the hard-won knowledge, the connected dots. In a world of brute force and chemical suppression, Billy's weapon was the story, and he was patiently, dangerously, writing it. The three scenes were not isolated acts, but interconnected movements in a sinister symphony, all conducted, directly or indirectly, by the unseen hand of Victor Cassadine. Victor's possession of Matt was strategic and long-term. He identified a vulnerable asset of high value, a brilliant mind, and offered a salve for its wounds that contained a slow-acting poison, total indebtedness. He was building a portfolio of human capital. Matt's future brilliance would reflect Cassadine benevolence. His medical breakthroughs would be Cassadine-sponsored. Victor was securing not just a doctor, but a living monument to his own power to grant destinies. Nick's acquisition of drugs was a direct, tragic parallel. He, too, was seeking to possess something to silence his pain. But where Victor sought to possess others, Nick was seeking to dispossess himself of his anxiety, his pressure, his very consciousness. His transaction was a pathetic echo of his uncle's, trading self-determination for temporary numbness. In doing so, he was making himself more vulnerable to the very forces he feared. A addicted, compromised heir is a pliable heir. Unwittingly, Nick was facilitating his own eventual possession by the family demons. Billy's investigation of Victoria was the counter-movement. His probing was an attempt to possess the truth, to seize the narrative from the Cassadines' control. Where Victor used contracts and resources, and Nick used powder, Billy used questions. He was engaged in a form of intellectual archaeology, digging through the polished surface of Cassadine philanthropy to find the crumbling foundations of manipulation beneath. His success would mean taking possession of the story, the one thing Victor could not afford to lose. Victoria, in the middle, was both a bastion and a battleground. She was the fortress Billy sought to penetrate, but also a potential point of vulnerability within Victor's empire. Her loyalty was his strongest shield, but Billy's gentle, relentless probing sought to find the flaw in that armor, the moment of doubt, the pang of conscience. Thematically, the night in Port Charles laid bare the core currencies of the city's power dynamics. Possession was the ultimate goal, of people, of peace, of truth. Vulnerability was the gateway. Matt's ruined career, Nick's crumbling psyche, Victoria's conflicted loyalty, even Victor's own driving need for total control, born of a lifetime of familial betrayal. Every character was either exploiting a weakness or was defined by one. The legacy at play was multifaceted. Victor fought for a monolithic, controlled Cassadine legacy, built on subsumed talents like Matt's. Nick was fleeing a legacy of madness and cruelty, but in his escape was destroying the legacy of his own potential. Billy was fighting for the legacy of truth-telling, of holding power accountable, a legacy often buried in Port Charles. By dawn, the landscape had shifted. Matt Clark stood on the precipice of a terrible bargain, his freedom the cost of his dreams. Nick Cassadine carried in his pocket not just a drug, but the seed of his own downfall, a private surrender to the chaos he feared. Billy Abbott walked away with a notebook full of dangerous connections, armed with a story that could either be a weapon or a death sentence. And in his penthouse, Victor Cassadine, perhaps watching the sunrise over the city he intended to own, could reflect on a night's work well done. He had secured a new vassal. His heir was quietly self-destructing, making him more malleable, and the only man asking the right questions was still piecing together a puzzle with most of the pieces hidden. The possession of Port Charles was not a single dramatic coup. It was a quiet, relentless process of acquisition, of talents, of wills, of silence, one transaction at a time, in penthouses, alleyways, and quiet studies, under the same heavy, indifferent summer sky. The war for the city's soul was not fought with bullets, but with offers that couldn't be refused, powders that promised oblivion, and questions that sought to expose the rot beneath the gilded surface. The battle lines were drawn not between armies, but within the hearts and minds of those who called Port Charles home.